Good morning. Welcome to our first. This is Tara and Rebecca from Canada Reads American Style, and this is our first YouTube live of 2025, our first episode of Reading from Our Shelves. Hi, Rebecca.
Woo-hoo! Hello. Happy New Year, and it's
Yeah.
2025.
Yeah.
Yes.
Happy new reading year. Okay. Do we want to just jump right in? It's been so long because I don't think we missed December. Mostly my fault. We missed December, so we haven't done one since November. So we each have a nice stack of books that we want to share with you all.
Okay, but I am going to say it's
Yeah.
probably not your fault for December. I want to just say this so that everybody's aware of it. Um, yeah, I'm looking for my mute button. I have had a cold since December, probably 14th, and I have a cough drop. I have my water, and I'm going to mute when I have to cough. So it's probably more me who couldn't speak. That's probably why we weren't doing it. So,
So I was also super busy at work and didn't have the mental and physical capacity to add something to the list. So
that's
it's a
true. I
combo.
forgot.
It's a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
combo.
It's
Yeah.
mutual.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's start. You want to start with your current read?
Yes, my current read. So my goal, if you've listened to our podcast about our goals for 2025, one of mine is to read books about mischievous, clever, independent girls. So in honor of my dear co-host Tara, I am reading Harriet the Spy, and I have to laugh because I never read it. And I don't know what year it was published, but it's so funny because immediately I texted Tara and I said, you know what? She's bossy and something else. And I said, it reminds
Yeah,
me of me. So I think it's, oh, tomboy and
that's it.
bossy. I'm identifying with Harriet the Spy, but I have to laugh because as a plus size person, in the first two chapters, she uses the word fat 9 times. She identifies people as fat. And then in the next chapter, and when I started it, she refers to somebody as the fattest person in the world. And I thought, okay, so this is definitely not a book for somebody who is expecting all the more modern sensibilities about perhaps not, you know, calling out people for being fat. So
Yeah.
anyway, but I am loving it because I she is a very quirky little character, and I I'm only about maybe about a quarter of the way in, but I'm really enjoying it, and it's really fun,
That's
except for
good.
the fat part, but I'm loving
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally forgotten that, but it doesn't surprise me because I would have read it in the 70s and it was
Yeah.
just until very recently, that's what you did,
Oh,
unfortunately.
absolutely.
Like,
And and to be clear too, it's not like there aren't a lot of classics that have completely racist, homophobic, and all sorts of other horrible things in it. But I mean, I just sort of was as soon as I saw the fat, I was like, yeah, this book was written a while back. So because we kind of don't do that now. But anyway, so but
oh,
I am loving it. So I love Harriet. She's cool.
awesome. She is cool. I loved her. I'm currently reading Hello Beautiful by Anne Napolitano.
Hmm,
Have you heard of this one?
I don't
A
think
friend
so.
sent it to me. I love the cover. I think the cover is beautiful.
Beautiful. Hmm.
And it is essentially Anne Napolitano is an American author. It's about four sisters in the Chicago area in the 1980s, 70s, and 80s
Hmm.
who are very close, very close. So it's an older, the second oldest, and then the twins. So four sisters. Apparently, it's like supposed to be an homage to Little Women, which I've never read. So I'm sure I miss, aside from the fact that it's four sisters, I think I'm missing a ton of stuff. Like, but having said that, I'm thoroughly enjoying the book because it's like a family drama, which I just really like family dramas. And what I also like is you're getting everyone's story, but each chapter focuses on a different character.
Oh,
But it tends to be, I've realized that there's one other character who I'm not going to say who it is, and the two oldest sisters are the ones getting their own chapters. The twins have yet, I'm about three-quarters of the way through, have yet to get their own chapters. And they cover
oh,
a period of time. It'll be like August 1983 to October 1983. And then the next chapter from a different character might be July 1983 to November. Like you get overlapping of time.
Yeah.
It sounds confusing, but it's not. It just, but I really like that. I like
I think
alternating characters and
that's
time.
interesting. Yeah. I haven't read Little Women either. I've only ever seen movies of it and everything. But it just dawned on me that would be a great book for my Fierce Girls kind of challenge this year. So I'm going to definitely read it this year. But so I think I'll read that first and then I'll read this one because I this one sounds really,
Yeah,
really fascinating. Well,
yeah,
I like that.
yeah.
Cool.
I'm really enjoying it. Okay, let's start. You're going to start us off then from reading from our shelves.
Okay. So I received this book as from Halle through River Street Writing. And this is um Sunrise on Half-Built Houses by Erin Steele. And it's basically a memoir of Erin's time where she is just coming out of high school. She has a boyfriend. She they they realize over the course of their relationship that they're actually both queer, but they remain really great friends throughout her memoir, and it's beautiful. But she ends up with addiction issues, and she literally starts out with, I think she was smoking pot or something, but she runs the gamut. I mean, I won't even go into the details because I really think you should read this book. It's actually really fascinating, and I will just say that I would say there are trigger warnings. And I've never really given trigger warnings before because I always feel like the stuff I'm reading doesn't feel like it warrants it for me. But again, I mean, there are issues that I don't have or haven't had. But this one, there's a little bit of cutting in the beginning. And then also some of the drug use in describing it. I thought, ooh, if you were somebody who had some issues with that, this might be a little bit difficult to read, perhaps. I don't know. But I'm just going to put that out there. Also, I'll be interviewing Erin at some point. I think sometime this month in January, I'll be interviewing her, and her interview will be up for everyone to see. But I really think what I love about it is she had a lot to navigate as a young girl and as a young woman, and she comes out of it successful. And I think those stories, when people go through the worst times they can go through, and then they come out and they're okay and life is good, I think those are just so inspirational. And why not read something that, makes you feel good, that there's hope and change, especially in January when we talk about New Year's resolutions and things. There's always this idea that you want to be better than you were before. And I think Erin just does a really beautiful job of showing that it's possible to go through years of addiction, for example, and come out, on the other end really well and happy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. My first book is The Memoirs of Miss Chief Eagle Testickle, Volume 1, A True and Exact Accounting of the History of Turtle Island by Kent Monkman and Gisele Gordon. Oh my God, such a fun book, which is a weird thing to say because it's about the history of the indigenous people on Turtle Island. From the viewpoint of Miss Chief Eagle Testickle, who is stunning and glorious. And this is such a informative read because there's lots of Kent Monkman. His art is beautiful. So his art is scattered throughout the book. But
This
they've
is the
done
perfect this is the perfect book to bring to our YouTube live because
yes,
yeah.
yeah. So you can really like it. It's stunning. I love his artwork. And it is fiction because it is, but it's still Canadian history. Like they've still done their research. And so in all of their, especially in the footnotes, there's lots of Canadian history that I did not know, which is not surprising. I'm not a history person, but I learned lots. I was also highly entertained because Miss Chief is funny and sexy. And it's just such a good book. I just really enjoyed it. And I have volume 2 waiting for me as well. So.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I went to the exhibit that they had at the ROM for him, And it was amazing. Like his artwork is, and his storytelling is just incredible. Because that was the thing too in that exhibit, that the weaving of the stories within all of his work was amazing. So yeah. And plus I can't get over, I always, the thing that always strikes me is this, it's the stilettos. Like his characters are always totally, it's all about the stilettos, which I think is wonderful. Okay. So my next book is, I think I bought this when I was in Ann Arbor, I think at the Literati bookstore. And it is Stories from the Tenements, Stories from the Tenants Downstairs by Sidik. And it's a collection of linked stories of these people who live in a tenement in Harlem. And I have to tell you, this was really kind of eye-opening to me. And, it shouldn't have been, but it was. Mostly because when you think about poverty and gentrification and all of those things that people face in urban areas, I always just keep thinking to myself, how do people survive every day? Like, how do they live, and how are they happy? Like I just can't even imagine it, because it just feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders when you're living in poverty and you're about to be evicted because you can't cover rent, you can't get a proper job, you don't have health care, all the things that can happen to people. But what's really beautiful about this book is through all the harrowing things that occur with all of these different people and families, is there's ultimately hope. And some of the stories are really tough. They're tough to read, but it was an amazing collection. And he also uses natural language, the way people talk. So he doesn't use quotation marks, and it is just really literally how it would sound if people were talking. And I really love that. And you, at first, you're kind of like, oh, wait a minute, I've got to really sort of read this carefully so I understand what they're saying and how they're saying it. And then you get into the rhythm of it. And I think it's what made this book perfect, because it really feels like you are living with these people. And anyway, I loved it. And it's really short. I think it's 8 linked stories. And it's just beautiful. And it was one I just picked up. I hadn't read about it. I hadn't heard of it or anything like that. I picked it up. I loved it. And it was, for me, I think it was a 4-star read. Can't remember, 4 or 5 stars. But anyway, I loved it.
Yeah. I recently, because you had mentioned, I think, one of the stories in particular, and I immediately put a hold on it at my library. So it's on its way to me because I want to read it too. And I'm
Yeah,
trying to work more short stories into my reading life. So
yeah, and I love linked stories because I love that idea where you get it a little bit here, and then you pick up that person's story a little bit there. And
mhm.
I thought he did a beautiful job. So I loved it.
Yeah.
Okay. How about
Okay.
you?
My next one is completely different from my last one in that there's no humor in this next one. It is Murder and Other Essays by David Adams Richard.
Ooh.
So, who is one of my favorite authors? I love his writing. Did I agree with everything he said in this book? No, but I still loved reading because I love the essays because I love his writing. So I may not always agree with what he said because he's kind of crusty. He's getting crusty. I get it. And he's has his opinions and that's what they are and totally fine. But
Yeah.
I love his writing that I'm like, and that's what society should be, us listening to each other's opinions.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean we have to agree.
I think that's a really good point. When was it published?
Ooh, let me see. I can't
I'm
remember.
curious just to see how.
Yeah, I think it was fairly within the last couple of years
Oh, okay.
or last few years. Oh, sorry, I just hit my thing. Oh, 2019.
Oh, okay.
And they go
Well,
back,
fairly
I think
recent.
some are like older essays that he'd written before. Oh, yeah, because he puts the date at the end. Like one is written in 1999.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just enjoy his writing that I like how he writes, how he says things, even when I don't agree.
Yeah. And that's around here anyway. They keep telling us we need to balance what we hear and reach out to
Mm,
people. So I think it's good if you're trying to do that with other opinions. So
yeah. Well, I should say he still does it very respectfully because
yeah,
I'll put out there, I'm not going to listen to everyone's opinions because I think there are some opinions that aren't worth listening to if you're not being respectful to people.
yes.
So he's
I,
still respectful. It's his opinion and he moves on, kind of thing, right?
I agree 100% with what you said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just want to put it there. Don't send me all your shit because I'm not going to listen to all of it.
Exactly. Yeah, well, yeah, there's a line you don't cross. 100%.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. I have just to show you my new book that I love.
Oh,
A Psalm for the Wild Built. So my sister's boyfriend, shout out to Stuart. He sent this to me. He is a reader. My sister is not. He is a reader. She won't watch this. So he's a reader. She's not. I'm so happy to even just sort of slightly have somebody in the family who's a reader because nobody else is. So I'm beyond excited. And he was telling me about this book and Becky Chambers, and he loves this book. And as you can see, it's a novella. It's 145 pages. I have all these tags in it. Um, it's basically about this monk who they're not happy in their job anymore, but they really don't know what they want to do. And this is supposed to be like a moon within a galaxy somewhere, and there had been a lot of chaos, and then it's many, many, I think hundreds of years later. Anyway, the monk becomes a tea monk. And so I told Tara, I said she probably would be a tea monk in this society, I think. And so the idea is that they go from town to town, they set up their little tea station thing, but then other people come, and it's like when they need relief from their job or their lives or whatever. And so it's just this really beautiful um, service that they provide, right? Well, that there's still something nagging the tea monk. They just don't know what it is. And they go off into the wild where they're not really supposed to go because years ago, when the robots no longer wanted to do what they were doing, they divested themselves of the human world, and they were allowed to go off and have their own life, and they were never going to meet again. So there are the humans, and then there are the robots. And the tea monk meets Moscap the robot. All I will say. I loved it. All these themes, and in 145 pages, Becky Chambers puts in so many deep things to think about and gives just a little bit of a hint of a discussion. But I'm telling you what, I love the robot. So I think the robot is my new favorite fictional character. I want to live with the robot. I want to be the robot. I just want my whole life to just be living in the robot's world. So let me just say this. There is a sequel or a book two. I don't know if she plans to continue the series. So I just picked this one up. I had a gift card for Barnes and Noble, and I picked it up, and I cannot wait to read it. But Stuart and I are going to read it together, so do a little buddy read of it. So I'm really excited. And so many of you out there probably know Becky Chambers. You probably read a lot of her work. I'm new to her, but thanks to Stuart, I am now a huge fan.
yeah. I have not read any of her work, but she's been in like, you know, there. I've been
Yeah.
tending to, but I just haven't. But now you've totally upped, and I'm going to get and read that book this year. Has Stuart read the book two yet himself?
Mm-mm. No,
Okay.
no. And that's what I was thinking, like, dude, you're telling me how much you love this book, and
Yeah.
you have not read book two? I can't even believe it. And I think a Psalm came out in 2022, I think. Let me just look really quick because when he told me, oh, 21, and then this one came out in 22. Okay, so the sequel or the book two came out in 22. So I'm like, shame on you, Stuart. How did you not
Yeah.
read it? Because I can't wait. Cannot wait. So
I think I'm going to, because normally I don't, it seems like I don't buy a lot of books. I'm very judicious in which books I buy. So normally I would just put a hold a live, but I want those books. I think I'm going to want those books and I'm going to buy both at the same time.
Mhm.
Just from what you've said, from what I've heard, and then now from what you've said, I'm just going to buy both of them at the same time. Done.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, I think it's because the subjects that come up, it's a just a tip of the iceberg of the subject, but man, this would be a great book to do a buddy read with or do a book club. I really think they would be great book club books, or at least the first one. I haven't read the second one yet. Okay.
Okay. I have another a collection of short stories, and it's The Doctor's Sweetheart and
Um,
Other Stories by Lucy Maud Montgomery, who is my favorite. And so this was a collection that I picked up recently within like the last year or so and hadn't read. So these are just I just wanted to I like going back into Montgomery's world every now and then. So this was allowed. But what I love reading because I've loved her since I was probably like 10 or 12 when I first read Anne. I love revisiting her world as an adult because your perspective changes. And what I realized from this one is how much a woman's worth depended on getting married. In this world, that's all it was about at this time, period in history in our country. All it mattered was her getting married. And it was very eye-opening, even though I knew this. It's until you actually, you read this. It was eye-opening. Also eye-opening, how many older men are with younger women. Ugh, like gross. And I realize now looking back, like I've read other books at that time when I read them when I was younger, you don't even think about it
right.
because that's the way it is. And now I'm looking, I'm like, wait a minute, all the Emily series, like Emily, who was like 12 at the time, like there was an adult male who was
Yeah.
essentially courting her
Yeah.
under the guise of friendship,
Yeah.
but he was essentially waiting until she was old enough for him, which was probably 16, for him to make his like move. And I'm like, that's gross. That wasn't
Yeah.
in this book, of course, but it reminded me of like the Emily series and I'm like,
Yeah.
gross. Yeah.
So in
I
that,
love her writing, Hate the World. But
yeah, is this book like different? Okay, they're not linked stories, but are they different characters in each story?
yes, yes,
Oh,
for
okay.
the most part. Like it's not were there I don't even know if there was any like Anne stories. So like they're all like separate.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No linking except that time by time, you know.
that's interesting. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is interesting.
But I enjoyed it. I loved it.
Okay, my next book you've already read. I loved it. Talk about a rollicking good time.
Oh,
Cold, Drew Hayden Taylor. Okay, so basically the book starts out where there's a plane crash, and I always want to be really careful how much I say, but there's a plane crash, and then a survivor writes a book about surviving. And then there are a couple of other characters. Elmore Trent is a professor of Indigenous Studies. And then Paul North plays in the Indigenous Hockey League, and he's like 35, and all he wants to do is party and have sex with random women. Puck bunnies. That's, as an American, I didn't know there were puck bunnies. So
yep.
anyway, and then there's Detective Ruby Birch, because there's some gruesome murders that happen. So Ruby is there to investigate. All of these characters are intertwined. And the thing about it, this is a book that clearly, because Drew Hayden Taylor writes plays. I don't know if he's written screenplays, but plays. And this should be a movie. Like, couldn't you totally see this as a movie?
Yeah.
100%. And I will say that you have to, I don't know if you remember how you described the ending to me. You said how you just kind of went with it. That's what you have to do. I mean, it's just such a wild ending. And I was reading reviews, so this is a sort of a just an FYI for anyone who reads the book. There are people who love this book, like you and I, and there are people who hated this book. I mean,
Really?
see the rude 1-star reviews this book has gotten. I mean, there aren't that many, but there are some. And I always like to read, like after I read a book, I like to go back and look. And then I always like to look at like the reviews where people didn't like it because I'm always just kind of curious. And so be aware that the ending is a little over the top, but it's wild, it's wonderful. I thought it was hilarious. And anyway, I love Drew Hayden Taylor. So and in that saying that I just want to bring up the fact that the first book I had read by him is Chasing Painted Horses, which I love. But do you know what's really weird is it's one of the few books, I don't know why when I read it, I honestly cannot remember what it's about. I remember it's set in Toronto, it's winter. He talks about a lot of places that I'm familiar with because I've been there so many times, but I cannot really remember the story. So I thought, I think I'm going to go back and reread it this year just so I can. But anyway, Drew Hayden Taylor, how can you not love this man? He's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I did love that book. I loved the ending. I just went with it. I just loved it. Okay, my next book. Boom. I love this cover.
Mm.
And it is Invisible Prisons, Jack Whalen's Tireless Fight for Justice by Lisa Moore and Jack Whalen. So Lisa Moore is the Newfoundland author who is, I think, only up until now written fiction. And Jack Whalen is, well, he was a young boy, but now I think he's in his 60s from Newfoundland. And as a young boy in his 70s, uh, he got sent to essentially like a juvenile prison. I'm going to just put it out there. It was touted as like, his mother was a single mom with, I think there were 5 of them. There was a large number of children. And he got into a little bit of trouble as a youth. And at one point, something quite serious happens. And his mother was just told by the court, you can't handle your son. You can't take care of him. We can do better. We're going to put him in this school where he will learn some control, for lack of better words, and get an education. Well, where they put him was the Whitburn School for Young Boys, so this was in the 70s. He was around 12 or 13. I born and raised in the 70s in Newfoundland. Everyone knew of Whitburn. It's just weird because he went into that school with a grade 6 education. He came out of that school with a grade 6 education. He spent months in isolation.
Oh.
He witnessed physical and sexual abuse of himself and of the other young boys that were in this. It was not a school. It was a detention center. It's and so it's him telling story. It's just
Oh, I
really
mean,
heartbreaking.
yeah. Ah.
Him telling his story to Lisa Moore. And they did it from what I really enjoy too. She inserts herself only in the sense that her struggles of telling the story and how they cooperated. So they met numerous times over Zoom, and every time she would then read to him what he had written, and he would be like, no, like that's not right. I don't like this sentence, put this in it. Like he really, at one point, he said, you're not getting the fear, essentially, of what I felt. And she realized that she did not want to face really what he had experienced as a young boy. And he was like, I want you to, like, it has to be in here.
Yeah. Oh my God. I
So
mean,
it's
you know
that
what?
story and his struggle to get justice because his daughter is now a lawyer and working to get justice with the government of Newfoundland for what her father suffered.
I just double checked to see if I had it on my TBR. I do, because you had talked about it.
Yeah.
You told me about it a little bit. I'm going to elevate that one because those stories, they need to come out. And what courage it takes to tell those horrific stories, but they have to come out. People have to know these things, right?
Yeah.
God,
Oh,
man.
it's terrible. And like I said, everyone knew, everyone as a child, I knew of Whitburn. Like it was just, you knew of the school.
Yeah.
Uh, he has evidence of when he was this young of like the superintendent saying, yes, keep him in isolation for an indefinite period of time. A 12-year-old boy.
And
Like it was
that kind of isolation they have shown since, I mean, back then we didn't know it, but they
yeah.
know now. It's like the mental health of people who have been in isolation like that or in solitary is horrific.
Yeah.
What they experience. Now my question is, and I don't know, you don't have to answer this if it's like a spoiler, but and maybe people know this, but I mean, is there repercussions for the people who did this to these children? Is there
The
any kind of
security guards, from what I understand, the security guards had no repercussions. So I'm going to say no. So it is, as an adult, he is now, his daughter is fighting, because there's also in the province, I may not get this perfectly right. So in all of Canada, except Newfoundland and New Brunswick, there's no statute on how long you can, how
Mhm,
old you have to be before you can basically sue
yeah.
for some kind of compensation. However,
Mhm,
except in Newfoundland and New Brunswick, there
mhm.
is for childhood treatment like this. In Newfoundland, I think, I can't remember exactly, but I think it's at 19. Once you hit 19, you have 2 years after you hit 19 to do something about the treatment you received. Well, if how
Jesus,
many people can face their trauma like
right. It can
at
take
that
a
age?
lifetime.
Yeah.
Wow.
So his daughter is a lawyer, and actually Lisa Moore's sister is also a lawyer in Newfoundland who is fighting for the same thing, for this to be changed. Yeah,
Okay.
it's an amazing story.
I'm going to move that one up my list because that one,
Yeah.
because again, like I said, those are the stories that I want to read because they need to be told and people need to sort of witness those stories, right?
Yeah.
Ugh.
And I apologize. Embarrassed. I got so like, because this is live YouTube and now it's just out there, that I got all flummoxed, but I get
No,
easily flummoxed sometimes. I like pretend I'm tough, but I get easily flummoxed, and I apologize.
I cry like a baby. So are you kidding me? That's nothing. So to me,
Oh,
that's emotion, you know? And you read this harrowing story about this poor, and it was a child. That's the other thing, you know. Sometimes, you know, you read harrowing things, but when it's a child or for me, it's children or animals or like old people. It's like, anyway, no apology necessary. I will speak for all of us.
just like embarrassed, but thank you.
No, you should not be embarrassed. I cry everywhere. I don't care. To me, it's like I get it out. That's good. It's healthy. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna probably cry now. I'll probably
Oh,
tear up not cry, but I'll tear up on this. And this was my stack. The next one, I hate to bring this up January, beginning of a new year, but it's really important that we all um are aware of this book. So I haven't read it yet,
okay.
but here it is. Demystifying Death to Live More Fully, Nothing to Fear by Julie McFadden, RN. And on TikTok and on social media, she is Hospice Nurse Julie. And the reason I'm bringing this up is um, I had started following her years ago on TikTok and hearing all these stories about, and the stories that initially appealed to me were the stories of like sort of the afterlife kind of stories that she told, which that were really kind of beautiful. And I know you believe it or you don't believe it, and that's fine, whatever. But she was telling these really beautiful stories. And then she was talking also about what end of life looks like. And I learned so much about it that actually when my dad ended up in hospice in January of 24, I actually was really thankful I had encountered her and was watching all of her videos because it helped me prepare better for my dad's passing. And it allowed me to not be stressed about what he was physically going through or what he might have been going through emotionally or mentally at end of life. I was able to just be present with him 100%. And I am forever thankful for her because I would not have had that experience if I hadn't been watching those TikTok videos with her. So I just want to shout out that, you know, TikTok shouldn't go away for the US because there's a lot more than just people dancing in front of the screen. There's things that you learn that are so critically important to you as a human being that I love. Anyway, uh, she published this book in June of 24. So my dad passed in February. So I didn't get to read it before he passed. But again, I knew what I knew before because of her. And I just want to just give you a couple of subject areas in this book. And she even said when she wrote it that it wasn't just for how to prepare if you're going to lose someone, it's how to prepare for your own death, which we all pretend isn't going to happen, but it does. So the subjects are the biological process of dying, which was very critical to know and understand, which medical interventions help and which ones don't. Again, critical to know and understand that before you're in that mode with a loved one. The otherworldly beauty of deathbed phenomena, financial and logistical preparations, facts and myths about hospice care, the grieving process, both before and after death. So I am confident, even though I haven't read it yet, that it's going to be a great book. And I just want to put it out there for anybody who may be on the verge, or even if you just want to be prepared, because again, I knew what I knew ahead of time and was able to spend quality time with my dad at the end. And for that, I am forever thankful.
What was it called again,
So it's
Rebecca?
called Nothing to Fear by Julie McFadden.
Okay.
And again, after my dad passed, I even said to myself, well, the book's a little late for that. I mean, although my mom is still alive. But I thought even for myself, like I want to understand more because my whole life, I've always had a fear of death. And knowing her and going through the process with my dad, I actually don't fear it now. And so I just thought, what a gift she's giving the world, and she's amazing. So check her out on social media. She has Hospice Nurse Julie. I love her. She's amazing.
Yeah, it sounds
Sorry
amazing.
to bring sorry to bring a downer subject to January 2025, but
Well, both of us like boom, boom. I'll raise it up a little bit. I have
there you go.
yeah,
Awesome.
Rough by Rod Carley. I love this. Look at that. I love crows.
Mm,
I love that. Anyways,
me too.
this also was a book that I got from River Street Rights via Holly. This is a historical fiction with Shakespeare as the main character. I flipping love this, and it's a humorous book.
Yeah.
So it is a funny book. I find with like intentionally funny books, sometimes it takes a while to get into a rhythm because it's a different rhythm when you throw in jokes, like intentionally throw in jokes as opposed to like most of the literary fiction I read kind of thing, right? So it took a couple of pages to be like, oh yeah, okay, the puns are supposed to be there, just fucking go with it and enjoy it. And I did. So it's funny. However, like I feel, and I know Shakespeare was a real person, but he wasn't a real person to me until I read this book, right?
Ooh,
He was a playwright before that. Now I'm just like, oh, Shakespeare, you're amazing. Like there's a pandemic in it.
mm,
So it happens, there's a pandemic, and of course there was. The hygiene was terrible. Like, and
oh my God.
there a pandemic, it speaks to modern times. He brings up issues of gender through the
Yeah.
playwrights, different actors. It's his wife Anne is a strong character. There's issues of death because his young son Hamnet had drowned and stuff. So, and yet, having said all that, it's a funny book.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's political and royal intrigue. It's just a really fun book that speaks to our time, full of puns. I love a pun. There's talking animals. There's witchy women, like true witchy women. Like it's, like,
Love that.
yep. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. There's another look at the beautiful. I just really like this cover too.
Have you read Rod Carley before?
No, this was the first book of his that I'd read.
Okay.
And he's had at least two that it says here. So Grin Reaping and Kinmount were his other two. I don't know what they're about, unfortunately,
Hmm.
but he's got a blurb from Morgan Murray, and I know you loved his book Dirty Birds.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yep.
Give me a hint of what Morgan wrote on that.
Uh, this ain't your mother's Shakespeare. It's punk rock, it's spicy, it's urgent, it's hilarious, and maybe most of all, it's a historical fiction that's very much for the right now. Oh my God, we totally.
That's exactly what you just said. That's
That's what
awesome.
I said, but he said it so much better because he's a writer. But there, yeah, I
That's
should
so
have
cool.
just read that out and been like, that's my review.
Oh my God, I know, because sometimes I start to write reviews, and then I go and look at what somebody else wrote, and I'm using almost identically the same sentence or like
Yeah,
words to describe, and I go, wow, I try not, and it looks like I copied, but I didn't, I
I
swear.
know.
Right, it's too funny. Okay, I just bought this one when I went to pick up the other one by Becky Chambers at Barnes and Noble with my gift card. I saw this on the shelf and I thought I have to have this. Apparently, it is the 20th anniversary, although I'm going to see when this was published because I don't know if it's this year. It's a teaser now because you don't know what I have in my hand. Um, yeah, 2024, but it was a 20-year edition. The Living Great Lakes, Searching for the Heart of the Inland Seas. And I have to tell you, I'm going to own my bias, but growing up in Michigan, we are the Great Lakes state. We learn how to remember the Great Lakes because we spell homes, right? Homes. Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Superior. That's how we as children learn the five Great Lakes. Now, I think growing up as a kid, I believe they all belong to us in Michigan. What a surprise it is to know that other places in this country and your country and other states also claim the Great Lakes, like Illinois, Chicago. I mean, Ontario.
Yeah.
What a surprise, because to let you all know, they belong to Michigan because we're the Great Lakes state. But anyway, so I'm really excited to read. I know, isn't that weird? Like as a kid,
Yeah.
I was a really geography based kind of like visual kid. So I just believe they all belong to us. So anyway, I'm really excited to read this. It just looks beautiful. And it just says, it's just like a meditation, I guess, on the Great Lakes. I don't know exactly. I just thought it seemed beautiful. And I'm excited to read it because you know me, I love my nonfiction. So
You do. I can't wait to hear what you say about that because I am late coming to my love of the Great Lakes. Because I was born and raised in Newfoundland and on the East Coast up until we moved to Ontario, I think in my early mid 20s. So I knew of the Great Lakes, but nothing, just that they existed and that's it until I moved here. And then,
yeah,
so my first experience of them would have been seeing Lake Ontario, which is stunning because I'm like, oh my God,
yeah.
it's like the ocean. And then I did some research cruises when I was doing my science degree.
Yeah.
I worked with a professor, and we would do some research cruises with the Coast Guard and go out onto Lake Erie most. And I fell in love with the Great Lakes. I
Yeah.
love them. So I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this book.
And my one claim to fame is as a kid, we had gone up to the Upper Peninsula in Michigan and we saw Lake Superior. And I swam in Lake Superior, which is the coldest of the Great Lakes.
Mhm.
And nobody else would swim in it. But I had this weird thing, even as a kid, that like if nobody else was going to do something, I was going to do it just to be the only one that would do it. And I
Yeah.
remember to this day, I remember being in that lake and freezing my ass off. It was so cold, but I could feel like a warm thing like in the middle of my body. It was weird. Like it was really cold, but then you'd feel like this kind of warmth or something. I don't know if that's true. That's my memory of swimming in like well, not swimming, but being in Lake Superior as a kid. I was the only one in the family that did it.
I think that was
So
hypothermia.
my body was like going, ah, get out of here. Yeah, I was a weird kid. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, my next Double Eagle by Thomas
yeah.
King, which was I don't know, maybe the seventh book in the Thumps Dreadful Water series. I forgot how much I'd picked this up last year, I think, and I just read it during at the end of the Christmas holidays because I like a mystery during Christmas, and I forgot how much I love this series. I love Thomas King, and this series with Thumps is a retired police officer who is now trying to be a nature photographer in Montana, who keeps getting dragged into in this little town of, I think it's Chinook, this little town that he lives in. The sheriff keeps dragging him into these murders that happen, and all he wants to do is just take pictures. Just take pictures. And he keeps being dragged into these solving mysteries, and they're fun. I love the cast of characters. They're quirky. They're It's just fun, you know, and
Yeah,
it's like the murder is like a little dark, but the book is not. There's
yeah.
levity to the book and stuff, and it's the fun. So much fun that I went out and picked up the next one to read.
Yeah,
So
and I haven't read any of those. I didn't even know about them until you mentioned them to me. I didn't
yeah,
even know them.
and they're quick reads too. Like I think now, mind you, this was in the during the Christmas holiday, so I had nothing else to do, just hang
Yeah.
out. But I read it in a couple of days, kind of thing. You can sit down and just go through it. And Thomas King is funny, so his humor's in everything, and it is very much so in thumps.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds good.
yeah.
Well, my last book is one that was gifted to me by Tara, and that I expect that we should this year and not wait too long, maybe right after Canada reads. We need to do our buddy read because we love Percival Everett. So, God's Country, you gave me this as a gift,
Yeah.
and we're going to do a buddy read. But I just want to tell you here's what it says, and I love this. It said this powerful novel spoofs the classic Western format with the dark, incisive humor we've come to expect from its acclaimed author. The unlikely narrator through this tale of misadventure is one Kurt Martyr, gambler, drinker, cheat, and would-be womanizer. It's 1871, and he's lost his farm, his wife, and his dog to a band of marauding hooligans. With nothing to live for but a desire to recover what was his, Martyr enlists the help of the best tracker in the West, a black man named Bubba. And this sounds so much like Percival Everett in every possible way. And
Yeah.
I cannot wait to read it with you.
Yeah. Yes, let's do that then. We'll do a buddy read after, like, not to celebrate Canada reads because we love
Yes.
Canada reads. Not so we're not celebrating the end of it, but just to mark the end of it because it's also a
Yes.
very busy season once they
Yes.
release
Yeah.
that long list and then
Mhm.
short list and then we start reading and then the debates. So yes, once it's all
Excellent.
done, that's what we're
Woohoo.
reading together.
I love
So
it. All right. Sounds good.
okay. So I have 3 books left. I'll go through them quickly though. So the books up until now are all ones that I've read from my shelf that came off this shelf here. And the books I'm going to talk about now are ones that I'm adding to my shelf. So very quickly, this one is, I got a theme going here because we have the anthology, which I picked up at my local bookstore, a different drummer here in Burlington. And they had a little display to celebrate Lucy Maud Montgomery's, the anniversary. Would be her 150th birthday last
Ooh,
year. And this
yeah.
is a collection of kindred spirits, inspired by the Canadian icon, Anne of Green Gables. I have not read it, of course. Uh, so 2024 marks the 150th anniversary of Ellen Montgomery's birth and the 30th anniversary of Acorn Press, Prince Edward Island's longest running traditional publishing house. What better way to celebrate these milestones than publishing a collection of stories inspired by the islands and one of Canada's most beloved author? And I think they're all very, so it's 10 of Canada's top young adult fiction writers as they set Anne Shirley on brand new adventures. So, with its futuristic settings, cybernetic beings, ghosts, mysterious books and boxes, and racial and sexual diversity in its cast of characters, offers serious scope for the imagination for all readers. So, it's like
Different
Anne,
authors?
yep, 10 different
Oh,
authors, none of whom I recognize because I don't read a lot of young adult, but I'm in. I saw that and I'm like, yes, please.
I like that. I'm going to put that one on my list. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that. The second book I have here is a continuation of my Helen Humphreys challenge, and it is The Reinvention of Love, historical fiction. Other than that, I don't know what it's about because I'm just reading through her catalog, so I'm just picking them up as I see them. Set during the tumultuous reign of Napoleon III and sweeping from France to the Channel Islands to Halifax and back, The Reinvention of Love draws a rich portrait of 19th century Paris. Anyways,
This woman writes the widest variety of
yeah,
books
yes,
ever. Like you can't pinpoint her as a this kind of writer, right?
no,
Because she's
no,
like she just writes about everything.
beautiful. So that'll be my
Amazing.
Helen Humphrey's book. So that'll be later this month. And the third book, oh my gosh, and it's such a beautiful cover, is the book 3 in the Bones of Ruin trilogy by Sarah Raleigh, who we interviewed. So check that out. I can't remember what episode it was, but the third book is The Lady of Rapture. There's that beautiful cover. And Sarah actually has another new book. So this is her most recent prior to what's coming out mid-January, the 12th or the 14th.
14th, I think, yeah.
Yeah, The Queen of Spades, I believe it's called. So I'm looking forward to that one. Again, another beautiful cover.
And that one is The Queen of Spades is a standalone book, I believe, right? Now, is that one is that a trilogy then? So that's the final book in the series?
So this is the final in the trilogy. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll be reading that one shortly too. I just love her covers. There we go. I've removed several from my shelf and I've only added 3. Well, that you know of. I have.
Exactly. Let's be clear.
Yeah. I was going to say I have more, but it was too many for this month. So I'm holding those off until next month.
Sounds good.
It all balances. It all balances.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Rebecca. Done.
Yep. We're done. All right. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy